The front desk has no record of my 3 a.m. call. It's a strange paradox, isn't it? You're at your most vulnerable, right when you feel the most safe. We bolt our doors, set our alarms, and trust the solid walls around us. And that feeling of safety for hire is never stronger than when you check into a hotel. It's a temporary home where everything is handled for you. You get a key card, a heavy door with a latch, and a front desk staffed 24/7. It's your own private bubble of security in a city you don't know. You check in, you unpack your bags, and you finally exhale, believing that for tonight at least you are completely and utterly safe. But that feeling, it's an illusion. A carefully built comfort that can be shattered in a second. This is a story about how that illusion was ripped away from me. It's about a simple phone call in the middle of the night that could have cost me everything. And it's about the chilling realization that the walls we trust can be thinner than air, and the systems we rely on can be turned against us. Sometimes the scariest threats don't need to break down your door to get into your room, they just have to call. Picture this, it's 3 in the morning and the phone in your hotel room shrieks, tearing you from a dead sleep. You grope for the receiver, your voice thick and confused. On the other end, a frantic man claiming to be from the front desk says there's been a major security breach on your floor. He needs your credit card information right now to secure your room and stop you from being charged for things you didn't do. What do? You're probably thinking you'd just hang up, right? That you'd immediately spot the red flags, but I'm going to tell you the story of how that exact call woke me up and the chilling discovery I made when I went downstairs. And you need to stick around to the end, because after I tell you my story, I'm going to break down exactly how this scam works and give you the critical steps you have to take to make sure this never, ever happens to you. The day had been a long marathon of recycled air and bumpy flights. I'd flown into a city I'd never been to for a series of work meetings starting bright and early the next morning. Of course, the flight was delayed, a creeping 2-hour delay that put me on the ground well after dark. The city was just a smear of unfamiliar lights as the taxi snaked its way downtown. All I could think about was a hot shower and the sweet, anonymous oblivion of a hotel bed. The hotel was one of those huge corporate chains, faceless but reliable. The lobby was predictably grand, with polished marble floors reflecting the soft, golden glow of the recessed lighting. It was late, but a few people were still wandering around, a pilot rolling his suitcase toward the elevators, a couple laughing quietly at the bar in the corner. The air had that generic, slightly floral scent that every hotel lobby on Earth seems to share. Check-in was a blur. The woman at the desk was polite but running on autopilot, her smile practiced and tired. She took my card for incidentals, handed me 2 key cards, and slid a little paper sleeve across the counter with my room number, 814, and the Wi-Fi password. Elevators are just to your left, sir. Enjoy your stay. The ride up was silent and quick. The 8th floor was one long, straight hallway with a dizzying carpet pattern. The air was still and quiet, the only sound the low hum of an ice machine somewhere down the hall. My room, 814, was right in the middle. I tapped the key card, the light flashed green, and I pushed the heavy door open. It was a carbon copy of 100 hotel rooms I'd stayed in before. 2 queen beds with crisp white sheets, a dark wood desk, a crooked print of a local landmark on the wall. The first thing I did was walk to the window. 8 floors up, the city was a tapestry of lights and shadows. The river of traffic below was a silent, pulsing light show. I just stood there for a minute, feeling that profound loneliness that hits you when you're a stranger in a massive, sleeping city. I was bone tired. The kind of exhausted where your muscles physically ache. I dropped my suitcase, didn't even bother to unpack. I kicked off my shoes and hung my suit jacket in the closet. The plan was simple: shower, set an alarm, pass out. The shower was hot, the pressure was great, a small but deeply appreciated luxury. I brushed my teeth, staring at my drained, bloodshot eyes in the mirror. Finally, I pulled back the covers on the bed by the window. The sheets were cool and stiff. I set my alarm for 6:30 a.m., plugged my phone in, and killed the lights. The room went pitch black, the kind you only find in hotels with good blackout curtains. The only light was the tiny red standby dot on the TV. The only sound was the gentle whir of the air conditioning. It was perfect. I was out in minutes, falling into a heavy, dreamless sleep. I had no idea that the most stressful and terrifying night of my travels had only just begun. The sound is what ripped me out of it. It wasn't a gentle wake-up call, it was a violent assault. a piercing electronic drill boring straight into my subconscious. For a second, I had no idea what it was, just noise. My heart started hammering against my ribs, a primal response to a sudden threat in the dark. Then my foggy, half-asleep brain finally put it together. The phone. The hotel phone on the nightstand was ringing. My first thought was, who on earth is calling me at this hour? I fumbled in the dark for my cell, patting the nightstand until the screen lit up. 3:17 a.m. A sharp, cold dread trickled down my spine. A call to a hotel room at 3:17 a.m. is never good news. It's an emergency back home. It's the police. It's something awful. My hand found the slick plastic of the hotel phone's receiver. I lifted it to my ear. Hello, my voice was a dry, raspy croak. Is this the guest in room 814? The voice was male, sharp and crackling with a frantic, urgent energy. I could hear the faint sound of keyboard clicking in the background, a detail that at the time made it sound more legit. Yes, I managed. Who is this, sir? This is David from the front desk. I am so sorry for the late hour, but we have a serious situation. There's been a security breach with our credit card processing system. It seems to have started on the 7th and 8th floors, and we're having to do a manual security verification for all guests on those floors. The words just poured out of him, each one designed to crank up the tension. Security breach, serious situation, my floor, my brain was struggling to keep up. I was still half dreaming, but the adrenaline was starting to kick in, clearing the fog fast. What kind of security breach? I asked, sitting up straight. My feet hit the cool carpet. Our digital system is compromised, sir. We shut it down completely. The problem is, because the system is down, we can't confirm which accounts are secure. For your protection, we need to manually verify your credit card details to firewall your room's security profile from the breach and make sure no fraudulent charges get posted to your account. It sounded plausible. Terrifying but plausible. He was using all the right buzzwords: firewalled, security profile, fraudulent charges. It played right into our deepest fears about digital security. And the fact that it was 3 a.m. actually made it feel more credible. Of course, an emergency like this would happen in the middle of the night. Scammers do this on purpose. They weaponize your exhaustion against you. Okay, I said slowly, my mind racing. So, what do you need me to do? My heart was thumping. The thought of my credit card being hacked in a strange city was sickening. I just need you to read me the 16-digit number on the front of your credit card, the expiration date, and the 3-digit security code from the back. I have your name and address on my screen. I just need to verify the card. Once I have that, I can lock down your account and I'll issue you a new key in the morning. I am very sorry for the inconvenience, but we need to do this immediately. And that was it. That was the moment a tiny bell of alarm finally managed to ring through the fog of panic. The security code. I remembered reading somewhere years ago that you never give that number out over the phone. But the man was already talking again, his voice layered with professional impatience. Sir, room 814, I need those details now. We have about 40 other guests to call, and the longer your account is unverified, the higher the risk. He was a master. He created a high-stakes problem with a ticking clock, a classic tactic to short-circuit your rational brain. A war was raging in my head. The panicked, sleepy part was screaming, just give him the numbers. Fix this, make the fear go away. My wallet was across the room. I could just get up, read him the numbers, and this whole nightmare would be over. But the other part, the cautious part, was whispering, this feels wrong. This is so wrong. Why would the front desk need my security code? They swiped my card when I checked in. A real hotel would never ask for this over the phone. They'd tell you to come down to the front desk. I am not comfortable reading my credit card information over the phone, I said. My voice was shaking a little, but I was trying to sound firm. There was a short pause. And when David spoke again, his tone was completely different. That professional urgency was gone, replaced by a sharp, nasty edge of irritation. Sir, I understand your hesitation, but this is standard procedure in a system-wide security event. This line is secure. If you don't verify the card, we'll have to deactivate your key card immediately, per security protocol. You'll be locked out. Furthermore, the hotel can't be held liable for any fraudulent charges that appear on your account, since you refuse to cooperate with our security measures. The threat was crystal clear. He was turning it around, making it my fault. He was preying on my fear of being difficult, of being stranded and financially exposed. It was a brilliant, terrifying script. I could feel my resolve crumbling. What if he was right? What if I was making a huge mistake? The thought of being locked out of my room in the middle of the night was deeply unsettling. The feeling of safety I'd had just minutes earlier was gone, replaced by a profound sense of being trapped. My hand was shaking. I looked around the dark room at the sliver of city light peeking under the curtain. It felt like I was completely alone, no one to ask, no one to check with. Just me and the demanding voice on the phone. Okay, I stammered, my mind a mess of confusion and fear. Let me get my wallet. Thank you, sir. I'll hold, he said, his voice instantly back to that smooth, professional tone. I stood up, my legs weak. I started walking toward the desk where my pants were draped over a chair, wallet in the pocket. Every instinct was screaming that this was a trap. My logical brain was fighting a losing battle against pure, uncut fear. I reached the desk, my hand hovered over my wallet, and then one single, clear thought cut through all the noise. What if I just go downstairs? It was so simple. If this was real, he'd be there. If this was legit, going to the front desk would solve the problem just as easily, and a hell of a lot more securely. The fact that he was so insistent I do it over the phone, that he was practically begging me not to come downstairs, suddenly felt like the biggest red flag in the world. I took a deep breath, walked back to the nightstand, and picked up the phone. You know what, I said, my voice much steadier now. I'm not comfortable with this. I'm just going to come down to the front desk and we can sort this out in person. The silence on the other end was immediate and absolute. It wasn't a professional pause. It was a dead, empty void that stretched for 3, 4, 5 seconds. It was the most damning response he could have possibly given. And then, just before I could say anything else, I heard a quiet click. He'd hung up. For a moment, I just stood there in the dark, receiver still pressed to my ear, listening to the dial tone. The sudden silence was somehow more terrifying than the frantic voice had been. The manufactured urgency, the threats, the script, it all just evaporated, leaving a cold, heavy dread in its place. My heart was still pounding, but the panic was morphing into a chilling certainty. I had just been targeted, and the scammer had almost won. The wave of relief was immediately drowned by a feeling of violation and white-hot anger. Someone had my room number. They had called my room. Or had they? He just asked if this was room 814. He never used my name. He was just dialing random rooms, fishing for someone sleepy and scared. The room, my safe haven, now felt contaminated. The darkness wasn't comforting anymore. It was menacing. I felt exposed. Was the caller inside the hotel? Outside? How did they get my direct line? I couldn't stay there. I had to know for sure. I had to see the real front desk with my own eyes. Getting dressed was a frantic, fumbling mess. I threw on my jeans and t-shirt, my fingers clumsy as I jammed my feet into my shoes. I grabbed my key card and phone, my hands still shaking with adrenaline. I paused at the door, hand on the latch, and listened. Nothing. I pressed my eye to the peephole. The hallway was empty. The same dizzying carpet, the same sterile corridor, but it looked different now. It looked sinister. I pulled the door open and stepped out, letting it click shut behind me. The walk to the elevators felt a mile long. Every creak of the building, every hum from the vents seemed amplified. I kept glancing over my shoulder, half expecting a door to open. I jabbed the down button. The wait for the elevator felt like an eternity. My mind was replaying the call, the scammer's confidence, the perfect, calculated way he pressed every psychological button. The doors chimed and slid open, empty. I stepped inside, my own reflection staring back from the mirrored walls. I looked like I'd seen a ghost. The elevator descended. 765 with each floor, my anxiety mounted. What was I going to find? A lobby in chaos, staff running around dealing with a real crisis. Or something else. The doors opened. L for lobby. The place was transformed. The warm, golden glow was gone, replaced by dim, functional overnight lighting. The huge space was utterly silent. The bar was dark, chairs stacked on tables. And there, at the far end of the vast, empty lobby, was the front desk, a single island of light in the darkness. Behind it stood one man. He was leaning on the counter, reading a book under a small desk lamp. I walked toward him, my footsteps echoing on the marble. He looked up, his expression calm, a little curious. He looked to be in his late 50s, with graying hair and a gentle face. He was the complete opposite of the frantic voice on the phone. As I got closer, I could see his name tag. It read Paul. "Can I help you, sir?" he asked, his voice low and even. I hope so," I started, my own voice still shaky. "I was just called in my room 814 from the front desk." Someone named David told me there was a major credit card security breach and he needed my card number. I watched his face as I spoke, no flicker of recognition, no alarm. His brow just furrowed in confusion. He stood up straight, his eyes scanning my face. He glanced at the phone console behind him, then looked back at me. "Sir," he said slowly, his voice calm and absolute, "there's no one named David working here tonight, it's just me." Hearing him say that, it was like a punch to the gut. It's one thing to suspect it, it's another to have it confirmed so plainly. "It's just you," I repeated, feeling like an idiot. "Just me," he confirmed with a slight nod. "I've been on since 11. And there is no security breach, our systems are perfectly fine." He held my gaze, and I saw a look of weary familiarity in his eyes. He'd heard this story before. "I'm afraid you were targeted by a scammer," he said, his voice softening with sympathy. "But the call came to my room phone," I insisted, the last piece not fitting. "How could they call my room directly?" Paul let out a long, tired sigh. "They don't call your room directly," he explained. "They call the hotel's main public line. They get the automated switchboard or an operator, and they just ask to be connected to a random room. They'll say, 'Can you connect me to room 814? If someone answers, they launch their script." The simplicity of it was horrifying. There was no sophisticated hack, no insider. Just some criminal with a phone, dialing the hotel's main number and socially engineering their way into a guest's room. The call hadn't come from inside the hotel at all. It came from somewhere out there in the night. The floor seemed to tilt. The feeling of violation was immense. That voice had been in my ear, in my safe space, trying to rob me while I was at my most vulnerable. And the most chilling part, the matter-of-fact way Paul confirmed it. This wasn't some shocking new event for him. It was just a known hazard of the job. The front desk had no record of my 3 a.m. call, because the call was never for their records. It was only for me. Standing in the dead quiet of that lobby, a chill settled over me that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. The threat was gone, but my sense of security was gone with it. It was replaced by a new, unwelcome understanding of just how thin that veneer of safety really is. Paul was a total pro. He apologized, even though it wasn't his fault. He said he'd file a security report and offered me a bottle of water, but what could he really do? The damage was psychological. The walk back to the elevator was a walk of shame and fear. I felt foolish for almost falling for it and terrified by how close I'd come. My mind kept replaying the scammer's voice, confident, authoritative, and completely fake. When the elevator opened back on the 8th floor, the hallway looked even more threatening. I fumbled with the key card, my hand still unsteady. Inside, the first thing I did was walk to the door and throw not just the main lock, but the deadbolt and the security latch. It was a pointless gesture, I knew. The threat hadn't come through the door, it had come through a phone line, but it was the only thing I could do to feel a shred of control. Sleep was impossible. I just sat in the chair by the window, watching the sky slowly shift from black to bruised purple, then finally to a pale, gray dawn. The city started to wake up, the distant rumble of trucks and the first honks of traffic filling the air. It brought no comfort. I just felt like a ghost who had watched a tiny, terrifying drama play out while the rest of the world slept. When my 6:30 a.m. alarm finally blared, it felt like a cruel joke. I'd been awake for hours, my body thrumming with adrenaline. The meetings I'd flown here for suddenly seemed completely trivial. All I wanted was to go home. All right, so that's what happened to me. It was terrifying, and I hope it's something none of you ever go through. But I don't want to just share a scary story. I want to turn it into a lesson that can protect you. So let's pull back the curtain on this. What is this scam? Why is it so effective? And how does it actually work? What I went through has a name, vishing, which is just short for voice phishing. This specific version is often called the fake front desk scam. It's brutally effective for a few key reasons. First, the mechanics. Like Paul, the night manager, told me, these guys don't need to hack the hotel. They just call the hotel's public phone number and ask the operator or the automated system to connect them to a random room number. It's a low-tech, high-volume numbers game. Second, and this is the most critical part, is the psychology. These scammers are experts at manipulation. Let's break down their playbook. The authority play. In a hotel, the front desk is the ultimate authority. By claiming to be David from the front desk, the scammer instantly wraps himself in that power. Our instinct, especially when we're groggy, is to trust the person in charge. The urgency trap. Notice how his script was designed to create panic and rush me. Serious situation, major security breach, act now. This urgency triggers our brain's fight or flight response, bypassing the part that thinks logically and critically. When we're scared and rushed, we make bad decisions. Weaponized time, the 3 a.m. call is no accident. They do it on purpose. They know when you're ripped from a deep sleep, you're confused, disoriented, and your defenses are at their absolute lowest. They are banking on your grogginess. The believable story, the script, was clever. It was full of buzzwords like firewall and security profile. They even add sound effects like keyboard clicking to sell the lie that they're in a professional office. It all sounds just real enough to be believed. The blame flip, this was the masterstroke. When I hesitated, he flipped the script and made it my fault. He told me if I didn't comply, I would be responsible for any fraud. He threatened to lock me out. This tactic preys on our fear of being difficult and our desire to resolve the problem. He made it seem like giving him my info was the only solution. This isn't some random prank call. The Federal Trade Commission has issued tons of warnings about these impersonation scams. They're run by organized criminal groups, often from overseas, using tech that can even spoof the caller ID to make it look legitimate. The person who called me was a professional criminal whose full-time job is to scare people into giving up their money. Now for the most important part. The story was the what, the breakdown was the how, and this is the what to do. I want to give you a clear, actionable plan to make sure this never happens to you. Let's break it down into 3 parts: what to do in the moment, how to be proactive, and what to do if the worst happens. If you get a call like this, here's your playbook. First, the golden rule: never give financial information over the phone. A legitimate hotel will never call you in the middle of the night to ask for your full credit card number, and especially not the 3-digit CVV code. They don't need it. There's zero reason for them to ask. Second, don't confirm anything. They might know your room number, but not your name. Don't give them any more information. Don't even confirm your name if they guess it. Give them nothing. Third, just hang up. You don't need to be polite. The second they ask for financial info, the conversation is over. Hang up. Don't argue, don't engage, just end the call. Fourth, call them back correctly. This is the crucial step. After you hang up, call the front desk yourself, but do not use a number the caller gave you. Use the front desk button on the room phone, or find the hotel's official number from your reservation email and call from your cell. Fifth, report it. When you get the real front desk on the line, tell them what happened. This alerts the staff so they can potentially warn other guests. You can also make yourself a harder target before they even call. When you check into any hotel, ask the clerk, "What's your policy for contacting guests about billing issues late at night?" They will tell you they would never call and ask for a credit card number. This preps you mentally. Be careful on social media. If you post a photo on Instagram and tag the Grand City Hotel, you've just told every scammer on earth where you are. Be mindful of what you share online while you're still on your trip. Maybe wait until you get home to post those vacation pics. Use the do not disturb sign. While it won't stop a phone call, it limits other ways scammers can try to trick you, like knocking on your door at an odd hour claiming to be from maintenance. Okay, let's say in a moment of panic you read them the numbers. It happens. These people are pros. The key is to act immediately. Don't be embarrassed. Call your credit card company immediately. Use the number on the back of your card and report it as compromised. They will cancel the card and issue a new one. This is the single most important thing you can do. Monitor your accounts. Keep a very close eye on all your bank and credit card statements for any suspicious activity. Report the fraud. Tell the hotel management what happened. Then file a report with the Federal Trade Commission at Report Fraud, FTC.gov. Reporting helps law enforcement track these operations and protects others. Look, traveling is amazing, but it's also a time when we're often tired, distracted, and out of our element. Scammers love that. They're always evolving, using AI to write better scripts and even deepfake voices to sound more convincing. They exploit the very trust that the hospitality industry is built on. But knowledge is your best defense. The fact that you listen to this means you're now armed to recognize this threat. You know the playbook, you know the red flags, and you have a plan. My story was frightening, but it doesn't have to be yours. Share this story. Send it to a friend who travels or a family member with a trip coming up. You could be the reason they don't become a victim. And please, let me know if you've ever had anything like this happen to you. Sharing our stories is one of the most powerful ways we can fight back. Be skeptical, trust your gut. A legitimate business will never, ever pressure you into compromising your own security. Stay safe out there. They lied about the call, so now I'm trapped. The lie about the 3 a.m. emergency call, that was just the beginning. Now I'm trapped. It all started 2 days ago. I checked into what I thought was a normal hotel, or at least, that's the lie I told myself. A comfortable illusion I clung to, right up until the moment I found the truth scrawled on a forgotten piece of paper. A truth that sealed my fate in another man's terror. I thought I was just checking in for a night. I had no idea I was auditioning. The drive was a 12-hour nightmare of rain-slicked asphalt, the windshield wipers droning a monotonous countdown on my life. My company sent me to scout a depot in a town called Havenwood, a place that felt less like a home and more like a spot the map forgot to erase. It was nestled deep in a valley, shrouded in a perpetual mist that clung to the ancient pines, quaint in a way that promised to turn menacing after sunset. My rental car, which had been making a worrying click for the last 50 miles, gave a final shudder as I pulled into town. I knew I wasn't pushing my luck any further. There was only one option, the Sleepwood Inn. It loomed over the street, a 3-story Victorian relic whose once majestic facade was peeling, the ornate woodwork sagging like a weary sigh. A flickering neon sign that just read "Hotel" cast a sickly pink glow over the wet street. It wasn't inviting, but it was a bed, and at that point I would have happily slept on a pile of rocks. I grabbed my bags, the clicking from the rental car's engine ticking like a time bomb in the quiet night. The air was thick, cold, and smelled of damp earth and rot. I pushed open the heavy oak door, triggering a chime from a small brass bell. The lobby, surprisingly, was warm. It was like stepping into a preserved corpse. Dark, polished wood floors, a threadbare but intricate crimson rug. A grandfather clock stood silent in one corner, its pendulum still as stone. The air smelled of old paper, wood polish, and something else, something vaguely medicinal and sweet, like cloves. Behind a long, imposing front desk sat a single clerk. He was young, with hair so blonde it was almost white, slicked back from a sharp, pale face. His burgundy blazer was immaculate, a perfect match for the decaying carpet. He didn't smile as I approached, just looked up from a large, leather-bound ledger with an expression of profound disinterest. "Checking in," I said, my voice hoarse. I set my briefcase down with a thud that was swallowed by the room. "Name," his voice was flat, utterly devoid of inflection. I gave him my name. He ran a long, pale finger down the page of the ledger. No computer. The whole check-in process was chillingly analog. I was too tired to care. "Room 314, he said, finally looking at me. His eyes were a pale, washed-out blue. They didn't look at me, they looked through me. "3rd floor, elevators to your left. Checkout is at 11. He slid a heavy, old-fashioned brass key across the counter. It was attached to a large, diamond-shaped fob stamped with the number 314. "Enjoy your stay at the Sleepwood," he added. The words were a line recited 1,000 times, devoid of any warmth. The elevator was a cramped cage of wrought iron and dark wood that went up with the groan of something in pain, the clank of chains echoing in the shaft. I felt a strange vertigo as it shuddered its way upwards. Room 314 was at the far end of the hall. The crimson carpet was more worn here, faded trails marking the paths of countless guests. The air was still and stuffy. I unlocked the door and fumbled for the light. The room was fine, spacious, dominated by a large bed with a heavy, dark wood headboard. A writing desk, a floral armchair, and a tall wardrobe. The window looked out over the misty forest. Everything was impeccably clean, but also ancient. The furniture was scuffed, the wallpaper yellowed with age, and the air held that same faint, cloying scent of cloves. I dropped my bags, kicked off my shoes, and fell onto the bed. The mattress was firm, the sheets crisp and unnaturally cool. I was bone-weary. All I wanted was 8 hours of nothing. I didn't even unpack, just stripped down to my shirt and pants, pulled the heavy comforter over me, and let the darkness take me. The silence of the room was a blessing, a deep, thick quiet that seemed to soak into my bones, the kind of silence I'd been craving, or so I thought. I woke up with a jolt. The room was pitch black, in absolute darkness that felt heavy and alive. I fumbled for my phone on the nightstand, its glare making me wince. 3:00 a.m. on the dot. What woke me? It wasn't a sound. It was a feeling, a subtle vibration through the mattress, through the headboard pressed against the wall. I held my breath, listening. The silence I'd celebrated just hours before now felt predatory. And then I heard it thump, a soft, dull, rhythmic sound. It was coming from the other side of the wall my bed was against. The room next door, thump, it was a wet sound. A heavy sodden weight being dropped or pushed or slammed against something. Thump, my sleep-fogged mind tried to rationalize it. A late check-in, clumsy luggage, ancient plumbing, thump, thump. Thump, the rhythm grew faster, more insistent. It was methodical, deliberate. And that wetness, my imagination, fueled by the dark and the unnerving feel of the hotel, started conjuring horrific images. A side of beef being tenderized. Something soaked being beaten against the wall, something worse. I sat up, my heart hammering against my ribs. I strained my ears for anything else, a voice, footsteps, anything. But there was nothing, just the relentless, sickening beat. Thump, 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 it was getting louder. The vibrations were stronger now, a real thrumming against my spine that I could feel in my teeth. Panic began to set in, cold and sharp. This wasn't normal. My hand shot out for the bedside phone, an old rotary model. I picked up the receiver, the dial tone an unexpectedly comforting hum. My fingers were clumsy as I spun the dial for the front desk. 0. It rang 3 times, front desk. The voice was thick with sleep, but it was him, the same flat, emotionless clerk. "Hello, my name is I'm in room 314, I stammered, my voice a harsh whisper. "There's a noise in the room next to me, room 312. A pause, I could hear the faint sound of pages turning. The thumping from the next room continued, a maddening counterpoint to the silence on the line. "A noise, sir?" the clerk asked, his voice suddenly clearer. "Yes, a loud noise. It sounds like someone is hitting the wall, repeatedly. It's been going on for 10 minutes. "Thump, thump, I see," the clerk said. His tone was so dismissive it felt like an accusation, like I was a child complaining about a monster under the bed. "I'll make a note of it." "A note? Can't you send someone? Security?" "It sounds violent." Another pause, longer this time. I pictured him staring at his ledger, annoyed. "We don't have a dedicated security team on staff overnight, sir. But I will personally come up and investigate the corridor as soon as I am able." The promise was vague, non-committal. "Okay. Please just be quick." "Of course, sir," he said, and the line went dead. I sat in the dark, clutching the receiver. Then, maybe a minute after I hung up, the thumping just stopped. The silence that rushed back in was somehow more terrifying than the noise. It was a heavy, watchful silence. I waited 10 minutes, 20, nobody came, no footsteps in the hall. No knock on my door or the one next to it, just nothing. Sheer exhaustion eventually won the battle against my fear. I lay back down, pulling the covers to my chin, my body tense. I fell into a fitful, dream-plagued sleep, the memory of that wet, rhythmic thumping echoing in my subconscious. Morning light was a weak, misty filter that did nothing to dispel the unease clinging to me like a shroud. I had slept in my clothes, and my body ached. The memory of the 3 a.m. incident felt both vivid and dreamlike, a surreal nightmare I couldn't shake. After a shower that did more to scald my skin than calm my nerves, I went down to the lobby for answers. I needed to confirm I hadn't imagined it. The same pale clerk was standing behind the desk, looking as if he hadn't moved all night. His pale blue eyes flickered up to me as I approached, his expression as blank as a tombstone. "Good morning," I began. "I called last night around 3 about the noise in the room next to mine." The clerk tilted his head. "I'm sorry, sir. The noise," I repeated more forcefully. "In room 312, I called you. You said you were going to check." He offered a thin, placid smile that didn't touch his eyes. "I'm afraid you must be mistaken, sir. I was on duty all night." The phone at the front desk did not ring once between midnight and 6 a.m. I stared at him, dumbfounded. The sheer confidence of his denial was staggering. "What? No, that's impossible." "I spoke to you. I have the call in my phone's log." My hands were shaking as I pulled out my cell phone, found the recent calls, and shoved it across the counter. There it was, a 4-minute call to the hotel's main number, logged at 3:02 a.m. The clerk leaned forward, peering at the screen for a long moment, his expression never changing. Then he straightened up. "A system glitch, perhaps," he said smoothly. "Our internal logging system is quite robust. It registers every call made from a room phone to the front desk. And I can assure you there is no record of a call from room 314 last night." My frustration was boiling into rage. It wasn't a glitch. "I spoke to you." His calm was infuriating, like arguing with a statue. "I'm sorry you feel that way, sir, but the facts are the facts." There was no call. He then delivered the final, chilling blow, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "Besides," he said, leaning forward, It would have been impossible for you to hear anything from that room. He gestured to the large, open ledger, tapping a long, pale finger on a line. Room 312 is unoccupied. It's been under renovation for several weeks. The blood drained from my face, unoccupied. The word hung in the air between us, heavy and cold, the thumping, the wet, rhythmic, violent sound. My certainty now being systematically dismantled by this pale, emotionless man. A wave of dizziness washed over me. Was I losing my mind? Had the stress of the job caused a psychotic break? I looked from the clerk's unwavering, pale-eyed stare to his ledger. All the evidence told me I was wrong. Only my own terror screamed otherwise. I see, I mumbled, defeated. There was nothing more to say. Arguing would only make me look insane. Is there anything else I can help you with? The clerk asked, his thin smile returning. I just shook my head, turned, and walked back towards the groaning elevator, the clerk's placid gaze boring into my back. He wasn't just denying the call, he was denying my reality. And that was the most terrifying thing of all. Back in the suffocating silence of room 314, I paced. My mind was a storm of confusion and fear. Unoccupied, the word echoed. If the room was empty, what did I hear? And why lie? I walked to the wall, the one I shared with room 312, and pressed my ear against the yellowed wallpaper. Nothing, just a dead, thick silence. I knocked on it. The sound was dull, solid. My agitation grew. I felt trapped, not just in the hotel, but in my own head. I had to get out, but my meeting was mandatory. I started getting ready, my movements jerky. I threw my toiletry bag onto the writing desk, and the impact sent a pen skittering off the edge, rolling under the heavy wardrobe in the corner. With a frustrated sigh, I got on my hands and knees. It was dark and dusty under there. I reached under, sweeping my fingers through cobwebs, but couldn't feel the pen. I stretched further, my cheek pressing against the musty carpet. My fingers brushed against something, not plastic, paper, folded, taped to the underside of the wardrobe's base. My curiosity overrode my frustration. Who tapes paper to the bottom of a wardrobe? I worked my fingernails under the old tape and carefully peeled it free. I crawled back out and sat on the floor, unfolding the small, creased square. It was a page torn from a notepad, filled with frantic, spidery handwriting. My blood ran cold as I read. If you're reading this, they've already lied to you. You heard them, didn't you? And you made the mistake of telling the staff. I froze, the paper shaking in my hand. It was written for me. I read on, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm. My name is David. I'm in room 314, just like you. I heard the crying from 312. I called the desk. And the next morning, the man with the pale eyes told me the room was empty. That's their first test. If you accept their lie, if you doubt yourself, they leave you alone. But if you argue, if you show them you remember, you get flagged. You're reading this, so you've been flagged. Now you have to play by their rules if you want to see the sun again. The rules of the Sleepwood Inn. Rule 1, do not acknowledge the other guests, not the ones you see in the halls, not the ones you hear through the walls. They are the hotel's permanent residents. To the staff, they do not exist. To you, they must not exist. Looking at them, speaking to them, it's like ringing a dinner bell. Rule 2, the staff are not your friends. Their smiles are masks. They are the hotel's caretakers, and their only job is to maintain the building and its collection. Do not ask them personal questions. Do not tell them about your life. Under no circumstances accept any food or drink from them that isn't commercially sealed. Rule 3, you will notice some staff wear a silver name tag. They are the caretakers. They are harmless if you are compliant, but if you see a staff member with a golden name tag, do not make eye contact. Do not speak to them unless spoken to. They are the hunters. They are the ones who deal with guests who break the rules, the ones who check out but never leave. You have been flagged. A hunter will be watching you. Rule 4, the noises are worst between 3:00 a.m. and 3:33 a.m. They call it the visiting hour. This is when the residents are most active. They will test your door. They will whisper from the vents. They will knock on your walls, keep your lights on, blare the TV, play music, make as much noise as you can to drown them out. Do not listen closely. Their voices can latch onto you. Rule 5, never leave your room after midnight or before 6 a.m. The hallways belong to them during those hours. The caretakers are gone. The hunters are watching. If you are caught, you will become a resident. Rule 6, checkout is at 11 a.m. You have one chance. Go to the front desk at 10:45, not earlier, not later. Do not mention the rules, the noises, the residents, or this note. Simply hand in your key and walk out. Do not run. Do not look back. If a hunter is at the desk, your chances are slim. They will test you. They will try to make you acknowledge the truth. Lie, lie like your life depends on it, because it does. The note ended with a final, chilling scrawl. I broke Rule 5 last night. The door is locked from the outside now. I can hear them scratching. Don't make my mistakes. Get out. I let the paper fall from my numb fingers. I couldn't breathe. This wasn't a prank. This was a warning, a desperate message from a ghost. The lie, the unoccupied room, the pale-eyed clerk, my brief, shaky sanity. It had been a lie. The truth was so much worse. I wasn't going crazy. I was being evaluated. My entire life before the sleepwood inn evaporated. My reality was now 6 rules and the 26 hours I had until checkout. I picked up the note, my hands trembling, and read it again. The hunter, the golden name tag. A cold dread washed over me. What kind of name tag was the clerk wearing? Was I already being watched by a hunter? I had to go to my meeting. I had to maintain the illusion of normalcy. Leaving the room took every ounce of will I had. I folded David's note, tucking it deep into my wallet, a horrific secret pressed against my credit cards. Before I opened the door, I took a deep breath. Rule 1, do not acknowledge the other guests. The hallway was empty. The crimson carpet swallowed the sound of my footsteps. As the elevator descended, I stared at my reflection in the tarnished brass, my face pale, my eyes wide with a fear I was desperately trying to hide. The lobby was quiet. The clerk was gone. In his place stood an older woman, her gray hair in a tight bun. I glanced at her chest, a silver name tag, Agnes, a caretaker. Relief was a pathetic, fleeting warmth. As I walked towards the door, I saw him out of the corner of my eye. A man in a burgundy staff blazer, standing by the silent grandfather clock. Pinned to his lapel, gleaming under the dim light, was a small, rectangular name tag, polished gold, a hunter. My blood turned to ice. Rule 3, do not make eye contact. I forced myself to keep walking, my gaze locked on the front door. I could feel his eyes on me, a heavy, analytical stare. The feeling of being prey had never been so literal. I pushed through the door into the misty afternoon, my heart hammering so hard I thought he could hear it across the lobby. The meeting was a blur. I talked about shipping lanes, but my mind was a frantic loop of rules and fears. Every shadow was a resident, every lingering glance was a hunter. When I got back, the hunter was gone. Agnes gave me a brief, empty smile. I didn't return it. The staff are not your friends. While waiting for the elevator, a woman appeared at the far end of the hall in a high-collared dress from another era. A resident, my breath caught. I stared resolutely at the floor numbers, my body rigid. I could feel her presence, a cold spot in the warm lobby air. The elevator arrived with a groan, and I threw myself inside, jabbing the button for my floor. I didn't look back. In my room, I locked the door, slid the chain across, and wedged a chair under the knob. A flimsy defense, but it was all I had. I ate a stale granola bar for dinner. I turned on the TV, the cheerful voices of a game show sounding obscene in the oppressive quiet. The sun went down. I turned on every single light. Midnight came and went. I was entering their time. I sat on the edge of the bed, fully dressed, facing the door. At 3:00 a.m. on the dot it began, not a thumping, a whisper from the air vent near the ceiling. A drawn-out hissing I first mistook for static. He yelped me, a child's voice. My body went cold. Do not listen closely. Their voices can latch onto you. I grabbed my phone, put on music, anything to add another layer of sound, but the whisper just weaved itself between the drum beats. So cool, then came the scratching, at the door. Light at first like a mouse, then frantic, fingernails on wood. The doorknob began to jiggle. My heart seized. I stared, frozen, as the brass knob turned slowly left, then right. Then it became violent, rattling and shaking, the whole door vibrating in its frame. The chair underneath scraped against the floor with a loud groan. Something wanted in. The whisper from the vent changed, no longer a child. It was a man's voice, rough and guttural. Liar, it rasped. You heard us. You told him. Liar. The scratching, the rattling, the whispering, it all built into a horrible cacophony. I squeezed my eyes shut, covered my ears, and hummed loudly, rocking back and forth on the bed, a man reduced to a terrified child. Then, as suddenly as it started, it stopped. The silence crashed down, leaving my ears ringing. I slowly opened my eyes, breath coming in ragged gasps. I looked at my phone, 3:34 a.m. The visiting hour was over. I had survived. But the whispers, they hadn't completely gone. Even in the silence, I could hear them, a faint echo at the very edge of my hearing. They had latched on. Sleep was not an option. I spent the rest of the night rigid, listening to the phantom whispers. The hours until dawn were the longest of my life. At 10:30 a.m. it was time. Check out, my one chance. I smoothed down my clothes, trying to look normal. I took the chair away, slid the chain free, and forced myself to turn the knob. The hallway was empty, bathed in weak morning light. It looked completely normal, but I knew better. The walk to the elevator was a mile. The ride down was an eternity of groaning metal. Who would be at the desk? A caretaker, a hunter. The elevator doors opened. My hope plummeted. He was there, the hunter, the man with the golden name tag. He stood behind the desk, writing in the leather ledger. He looked up as I approached, a slow, cold smile spreading across his handsome face. The smile of a wolf greeting a lamb. "Checking out?" he asked. His voice was smooth silk wrapped around a razor blade. I just nodded, my throat tight. Rule 6, hand in your key, don't mention anything. Lie. I fumbled for the heavy brass key and placed it on the counter. It clattered against the wood. The hunter's eyes darted to the key, then back to my face. His smile widened. He didn't reach for it. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the desk. "We trust you had a pleasant and uneventful stay," he said. The word uneventful was a loaded gun pointed at my head. It was the test. He was daring me to break the final rule. A terrified part of me wanted to scream, to confess everything. But David's final words, "Don't make my mistakes," were a lifeline. I took a breath. "Yes," I said, my voice a dry croak. I cleared my throat and tried again, forcing a strength I didn't feel. Yes, it was very quiet, very restful. The hunter's eyes narrowed. He studied me, searching for a crack. He tapped a long, manicured finger on the counter. A ticking clock. "Are you sure?" he pressed, his voice a conspiratorial murmur. No disturbances. No strange noises, no unexpected company. He knew I was lying. He was enjoying this. He wanted me to break, to acknowledge the residence, to fail the test so he could check me out, permanently. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but the rule was clear: do not run, walk. I summoned my last ounce of resolve. I looked him dead in the eye, a terrifying act of defiance. I even managed a small, tired smile. "No, nothing at all," I said, the lie tasting like ash. "Honestly, I slept like the dead." The moment stretched, the hunter's smile faltered. For a split second, I saw a flicker of something in his eyes, not anger, disappointment. The wolf had been denied its meal. He straightened up, his professional mask sliding back into place. "Very good," he said, his voice clipped. He finally picked up the key. "You're free to go." It was a pardon, a stay of execution. I nodded once, turned my back on him, and walked across that crimson rug toward the heavy oak doors. I could feel his stare on my back. I expected a hand on my shoulder, the doors to be locked, but they weren't. I pushed through, and the cool, damp morning air hit my face. It had never smelled so sweet. I did not look back. I walked, fast but not running, to my car. I peeled away from the curb, leaving the Sleepwood Inn and its perpetual mist behind me. I drove for 6 hours straight. The further I got from Havenwood, the more the phantom whispers faded, replaced by the drone of the highway. The sun broke through the clouds. It was over. That night I checked into a brand new, sterile, brightly lit chain hotel. Everything was plastic and chrome. The key was a card. The clerk was a cheerful teenager. I was safe. In my room, I stood in the middle of the clean, anonymous space, breathing. I'd made it. David's warning had saved my life. I started to unpack my overnight bag. I pulled out my laptop, my worn shirt, my toiletry bag. As I set the bag on the counter, something small and white fell out and fluttered to the floor. It was a piece of hotel stationery, folded neatly in half, but the logo wasn't the Sleepwood Inn's faded crest. It was the bright, corporate logo of the very hotel I was now standing in. My blood ran cold, my breath hitched. I didn't put that there. With hands that were suddenly, violently trembling, I bent down and picked it up. I unfolded it. It was a new list of rules. The handwriting was clean, precise, and elegant. Rule 1, welcome. We're so glad you decided to extend your stay with us. Rule 2, your old duties are concluded. Your new duties will begin tomorrow. Rule 3, you demonstrated an exceptional ability to follow instructions and maintain discretion under pressure. Management has taken notice. You are a perfect candidate. Rule 4, there is no checkout. This is your home now. This is your job. I stared at the paper, my mind refusing to process the words. This couldn't be happening. I escaped. I won. My gaze lifted from the note to the large mirror above the dresser. I looked at my own reflection, at my pale face and wide, terrified eyes, and as I watched, my reflection began to change. My mouth twisted, pulling itself into a wide, unnatural smile, a cold, placid smile that didn't reach my eyes. It wasn't my smile, it was his, the hunter's. My reflection slowly raised a hand to its chest, and there, pinned to the fabric of my shirt in the mirror, was a small, rectangular name tag. It It wasn't silver. It was gleaming, polished gold. I hadn't escaped. I hadn't passed a test to be free. I'd passed the interview. If you enjoyed this story and want to make sure you don't miss the next one, please consider liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and hitting the notification bell. It helps more than you know.